Yes, welcome to the Gridiron Studs show. It's been a while, but I'm back. And let's not get this confused with the Two Chunks Football podcast that I do with Emil Calomino. This is a totally separate show, 100% dedicated to college football. The new college football, by the way, that I should point out because things just are not the same. I think I've been gone for quite some time in terms of a Gridiron Studs show. And man, you take any kind of a pause on anything having to do with college football, and so many things can change. Since our last show here on the Gridiron Studs show, Nick Saban has retired. There have been a number of legislative moves in college football that would render anything that you may recognize from college football even 5 years ago absolutely unrecognizable. And we're here to talk about some of those things today, and then some helpful advice to high school football recruits that are feeling the squeeze and the pinch of both NIL and the transfer portal. A little bit of advice for you guys out there. A quick show. Not going to do an hour here. Probably be with you guys for the next 30 minutes or so. So let's just jump right into it. Speaking on the brand new college football, the big news dust up over the weekend, whatever you want to call it. The attention-getting device this weekend was what happened on the campus of the University of Texas as they flexed their muscle this recruiting weekend with a bevy of Lamborghinis, I believe 8 of them, laid out on campus, along with 4 G-Wagons, by the way, for incoming recruits on this big recruiting weekend for them. Most of them on the defensive side. I can't fount of that. You guys know my defensive background. But the University of Texas wanted to let you know, in this world and era of NIL, nobody's got more money than us. Now, I don't know how you folks out there feel about the NIL and all that stuff. You know, if you're somewhere around my age range and you've got a little bit of gray in your beard or some gray streaks in your hair, you probably don't really love it. And that's not to say that you're against players getting paid. It's just how this looks, what it looks like, and what it's going to do to the players. And of course, the younger generation wants us who may have any opposition against this at all to just shut up and go on about our business and stop being the old man that's saying, get off my lawn. Again, I and many others like me are not against the players getting paid. It's just we can feel what it is some coaches have already mentioned, and I know no one has any love for the coaches out here. And let's be quite frank, they've maybe abused the system that I will say, did not set up. They did not set up this system at all, but they've certainly made good use of moving around, leaving players hanging at programs where they recruited them to, upscaling to new and higher tiers of salary. And that's been my biggest reason for supporting all of the new legislation that has come down in college football with respect to a transfer portal and NIL, is that, if the coaches didn't move around quite as much as they did, and in the fashion in which they did and do, I would probably not support a whole bunch of this. But given as though these coaches can move around and head out and leave guys sometimes within 24, 48 hours of them signing their national letters of intent, well, then you know what? Something should be put forth and done for the players there. And apart from that, yes, college sports is generating billions of dollars and seemingly on the back of the players. We can argue all day about the scholarships and the education, but you do have to consider that there are some limitations in what you can take as a college football or a college athlete. Some majors are frowned upon because it doesn't necessarily jive with the schedule that is athletics. And what's these educations worth now any day? These people are leaving colleges. If you're not a doctor or a lawyer or a chemist or something really technical like that, most folks are just leaving these college campuses with a mountain of debt that'll take them well into their 40s to pay off. And for a lot of folks, they don't even, get jobs in their proposed and prescribed and acquired degree. So there's some question marks as to what a degree is really worth here in the good old United States. Okay. But getting back to all of this, I don't want to hear anything out of Texas from Steve Sarkisian or anyone involved in the higher ups at Texas about the players are just in this for the money. You have herefore banned yourself from being able to say anything like that after this move you pulled this weekend, when you led with your breast, so to speak, by having the Lamborghinis and the G wagons laid out there for the players and just pretty much telling them, come to Texas, you're going to get money. I would presume that, other parts of this weekend did indeed show the players how they would fit into the program, the degree that they would potentially earn if they stayed long enough, and just how the University of Texas is going to make them otherwise better outside of financially. However, you led with the Lamborghinis. So, as I said, you have hereby canceled yourself from being able to say anything like the players are just in it for the money. This is like feeding a kid candy when he's young and then complaining at 10 years old that he's fat. This is having a low-cut dress with mad cleavage and you're pissed that guys are not looking you in the face. That's what this is, University of Texas. So stay tuned to see how this rubs out. Pause. Over the coming years, even though we have now embarked upon a revenue share model that is still in the works for the NCAA. I don't know how you folks out there feel about it. I'd love to hear about it in the comments. A $2.8 billion settlement. There's a lot of figures being thrown around here, but ultimately what this is going to mean is that some college football players in the past, I believe going as far back as 2016, are going to receive compensation based on some kind of tiers that is set up, some formula that's out there. And I'm not geeky enough to be able to give you the exact figures on that or to even sort out what all of that would mean and who gets what, even if the numbers were right here in front of me. Just not that smart. What I do know, though, is that going forward, more than likely, and as early as 2025, the NCAA has worked out a system whereby they will compensate players, which means checks, basically like employees. There's no more amateur athlete in college football. We could forget about that. No more amateur athlete in college sports. Now, member programs, meaning the colleges, many of them are saying this is going to, if not bankrupt their sports departments, it will mean the cut of some sports that don't bring in much revenue. That remains to be seen. This could just be some foot stomping and having to give up some money that they were already counting on being in their bank accounts and now having to, oh my God, turn it over to the players. The ones that are out there slaving and practicing and playing out on the field, and the actual ones that are on TV that bring the revenue and pack the folks into the stands. Well, let me not say pack. We're talking about programs that could potentially get cut. We'll see about that. Somehow, I don't think that is going to happen, but a revenue share is upon us. They're saying this could mean the end of NIL. If you've been around for a while, you know better than that. You absolutely know better than that. A revenue share sounds like something that's going to be equal and kind of fair depending on what tier you're in. So if you're, a Power 5, well, now Power 4 school, there will be a certain amount of money that I think will probably be even kind of across the board. Of course, all of this depends on, the richness and revenue intake of the sports programs and the sports departments at each of these schools, but it will be a little more even than what we have going on with the NIL right now. But you and I both know, everyone out there knows that college sports, college basketball and football in particular, are quite competitive. And if you think that Alabama and Texas are going to sit there and compete for a kid and tell them this is all we can give you, you're fooling yourself. If you don't think the people that make up an NIL collective right now, the good old boosters from back in the day, which is what the NILs are right now, they're just the boosters out of from their dark, shadowy corners out right in front now, letting everyone know who they are. And some of them are quite happy to let you know that they're involved in bringing the 5-star recruit to the program, and they're responsible for the championship rings. If you don't think they're going to still be heavily involved once this revenue share thing comes into place, then you're sadly mistaken. That will be the clinching, or the what do I want to say here? That will be the difference maker for some of these big programs. So those NIL and the boosters aren't going to go away. They may come off that street corner and go back into their alleys, but I'm here to tell you right now, NIL and booster money will still exist, and that will just have to be added on top of the revenue share money that these players are going to get. So it's not going to be quite the Wild Wild West, but I can guarantee you, if you fell into a coma 10 years ago and woke up today, you do not recognize college sports at all. It has changed completely, and that's what we're into. Nebraska's athletic director came out and said, nah, our $10 million budget that we have for the revenue share is not what Ohio State and Oregon has, and we're all in the same conference. He says they have a $10 million NIL budget. Ohio State and Oregon has a $23 million NIL budget. I'm sorry, I said revenue share. I'm talking about NIL. Okay, it's come out and said, if you guys had ever wondered about what kind of money is being thrown around in terms of, we can never really confirm the individual contracts that these NIL players are signing, or getting put together. There's rumors. There's no report on it. There's nothing that we can, solidly get our hands on to say that this is exactly what so-and-so got. It's not like the coaches' salaries. However, Nebraska says they have a $10 million NIL budget, just in case you folks out there were wondering. And it is known that Ohio State and Oregon, for example, have a $23 million budget. And money wins in college football. It's money, 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 money. So if you want to know why Ohio State and Oregon and other schools of that ilk are able to grab these 5-star players over a place like Nebraska, that's a big part of it. Of course, there's some traditions too. Nebraska is not wanting enough to even compete for those type of recruits, despite the budget discrepancies. But this is a big part of it. And if NIL were to continue, because again, this revenue share thing has not completely been solidified, it seems more likely than not that it will indeed happen. But let's say that it didn't. This disparity in NIL budgets would continue to be a problem for schools like Nebraska and others in the Power Four that are not upper tier. And so what schools like this would have to really, really rely on is great development, great coaching. I don't want to say trickery, but you would have to be, really schematically correct to try and compete against the Ohio State and Oregons of the world, the Georgias, the Alabamas, the Clemsons of the world, the Michigans, the rich schools, so to speak. So what will happen here if this revenue share is approved is that there's a $20 million placeholder for a school like Nebraska. And one of the big things that Nebraska has going for it is its attendance to games. I think you folks have seen it. They will get 85, 90,000 people to come to a spring game in Nebraska. That is not happening in some other parts of the country. Matter of fact, they're probably number one in terms of attendance to things like the spring game. And of course, if you're going to get 90,000 to a spring game, you're going to get a full house most weeks, most weekends, most Saturdays if you're Nebraska. So a good amount of revenue for them there. So they'll do fine when this whole revenue share thing comes out because they've got money in the chest because of the fan participation. So just a little thought out there for some other schools as we may be approaching a revenue share model. You want to see your school make it compete, be able to pick up 5-star if we're all going to play with clean hands here. Even though I've said all that about NIL still being involved, you're going to have to go to games. Do you hear me, University of Miami fans? You're going to need to go to games because the whole program is going to need to have money coming in. And we're not supposed to be relying on NIL boosters. That could get us slapped by the NCAA. That's going to be a problem. They go back to going into the shadows. I'm talking about the boosters, and now getting money from them could go back to being a problem. That will get you a death penalty if you're a school like USC or Miami. Georgia, Alabama, not so much. A little slap on the wrist. Let's keep going because, you're the engine that drives this car. My thoughts here are for you guys that are feeling, and, for you parents out here that are watching this and you players that happen to be watching this podcast, I understand it has gotten harder and harder for high school football players to get scholarships in college football at a time when it should be easier, you would think, just because of social media and the ability to travel out of state and all of these wonderful technological things that are available to us, things like Huddle and, a better opportunity to be seen no matter where you are in the country, what corner of the country you are, Idaho, New Mexico, Maine. It should be easier for you to get a college football scholarship, even though, of course, those limitations in terms of how many they can give out every year and, how many scholarship players can be on a roster. Aside from that, it should be easier to be seen. And quite the opposite has happened because of the transfer portal, which has little to no rules at this point right now. And I don't know how much that's going to change. I haven't really checked up on that. In fact, I think they've relaxed some rules recently. Now you can just transfer as often as you would like without penalty, no sit out. No, I'm not too much in favor of that. One move, maybe, perhaps two. I don't like the unlimited moves. You leave it to young folks. They are not schooled. They're not used to dealing with adversity. And the first sign of it, they're going to move on. It's just kind of what youth is about. And so I've already witnessed a bunch of that. Well, since the transfer portal has become a thing, a lot of unnecessary movement. There's some moves that are necessary. Let's just be honest about it. Sometimes you got to go. Sometimes a new staff comes in. Some of these staffs are coming in and encouraging guys to move. And by encouraging, I mean sort of demanding them to move. But nevertheless, the day of a fringe player chasing those Power 5, Power 4 offers should probably end. And now I've said this in the past, even before all of this latest, legislation came about. I mentioned this. Now I'm going to say this to you with even more intensity. First of all, I truly believe the better coaching for a lot of players is going to come at the group of 5, FCS, and even the Division II level. There's going to be more of a stable program there. There are going to be coaches there who are there year in and year out, and you can build a relationship with. This includes the strength coach and everyone involved in your development at a program. You're going to be in the same system more times than not. And the focus is going to be a lot more on coaching and a little less on recruiting. Not to say that those schools aren't, fully involved in their recruiting, but there's a little bit more on coaching because they know they must develop these players. They know they're getting a player that absolutely needs to be developed. Whereas in the Power 4 and the amount of power that the schools have in the Power 4, they can just get another guy if he doesn't look like what he should look like the first 2 or 3 weeks into that first summer camp, or if he enrolls early and he's in the spring. Players get thrown away really fast in the Power 4 conferences. It's just the way that it is. It's the nature of the beast because the coaches can get thrown away pretty fast. Look at the University of Florida that gets rid of their coach every 2.75 years. It's very difficult. You don't really have time to sit here and wait for a player to develop, to see if that egg would hatch and produce a good egg for you. That's just the way that it is. So if you're a fringe player, first of all, you need to identify that you're a fringe player, and you got to let go of your ego. Yes, maybe your teammate that you think you're better than, or you've got several teammates that are going to Clemson, or they're going to Miami, or Florida State, Texas, Michigan, Ohio State, USC, Oregon. Maybe they are. Right now, they have that opportunity. You don't. And life's not ending at 18 years old. I would say to you, take an interest in the schools that are interested in you. Here's the good thing about the NIL that I have, not the NIL, but the transfer portal that I've noticed. It's difficult for you as a high school football player to get in because of the transfer portal. But if you play this right and you go to a school that's interested in you and you totally blow it up, you go crazy there, you put the time and the effort in and you go wild, there's a chance for you to level up. There's a chance for you to move on and go from a lower tier school to a higher tiered school. For instance, Marcus Harris from Idaho, defensive back, who leaves Idaho now and he's going to Cal. He was not a highly recruited player coming out. And so Idaho was where he had to go. Went there, balled out, played very well. And now he's going from Idaho to Cal, a higher tiered program. That's just one example. I've seen several others. You have that ability. Now, you may or may not want to do that. You may go to this school and everything's great. It's set up for you there. They actually developed you. They put the time in. They invested in you. And you actually want to stay there, a la Quinyon Mitchell was a first-round pick for the Philadelphia Eagles out of Toledo. Young man went there, balled out, had 4 interceptions in a game, was a player really, really early at Toledo, and he was being eyeballed by several top college football programs, including the almighty Alabama. The word on the street was they were just waiting for him to eventually end up in the transfer portal because that's what they kind of expect. When a fringe player, and by fringe I mean not highly recruited, and I don't use that term in a derogatory manner, doesn't mean you're not a good player. It's just for whatever reason, you are not highly recruited. Coming out of high school, goes to a college, and they make moves early. They look like a baller. They develop quickly, and they turn into something. The vultures from the Power 5 and the top tier schools who are constantly looking for players will come swooping in. And Quinyon Mitchell decided that he was going to remain loyal to the school that was loyal to him. Perhaps you want to do that. Perhaps that's who you are. And I'm not here to criticize anyone either way. But I'm just saying to you, you have that available to you as in terms of a transfer portal. So while it might be wreaking a little mayhem on your current high school to college football recruiting process, if you play it right and you find schools that are interested in you, you can go there. And if things get really, really well, they go really, really well for you there, you may have an opportunity to level up. You're looking at a guy who did that. Now, in my time, there was no transfer portal, and you did have to sit out if you transferred, and it was quite a process. I got lucky. Started off my career at Long Beach State. I don't blame you if you don't know anything about what that is, where that school is. Perhaps you know Long Beach because of Snoop Dogg, but yes, they played football at Long Beach State, and I was on the team. I was on the final team at Long Beach State. The fortunate thing for me was that they cut the football program, and that allowed me to go anywhere else that I wanted to, or any team that would have me without penalty. And I was lucky enough to be picked up by the University of Miami. So I went from, at the time, if Long Beach State, my final year there, 1991, was not the worst college football program in the country, it was second to worst. No lie, look it up. We weren't very good. We were not good at all. In fact, we played the University of Miami my second year. We lost 55-0. Trust me, it could have been 77-0. Went from the worst to the number one team in the country. University of Miami won the national championship in 1991. Nowadays, you can make that move without a program being cut via the transfer portal. So this day of sitting around and casting aside smaller schools because you think you're big time or you should get better offers, I would strongly suggest you not do that. I would strongly suggest you take an interest in any school that's interested in and go from there. And the way coaches move around nowadays, that coach that was trying to recruit you at that Division II school very well might be the coach at the FCS or the FBS school that you want to go to. Within 48 hours, that can happen. So my message to you guys on the way out the door is take an interest in the schools that are interested in you. You never know. That partial scholarship might be the only thing available to you when the time comes. If you level up from that early interest from a smaller school into something bigger, great. But don't cast aside the schools that are interested in you early on, right now, or whenever they're interested. If a school is interested in you, you're interested in them. If a coach is interested in you, you are interested in them. That's my parting message for you guys today. I am going to have more Gridiron Studs shows. They'll be longer than this. I just wanted to get back into the feel of the things, get my Gridiron Studs show legs back up under me, and, basically also introduce you guys back into the Gridiron Studs show where we'll talk college football topics as well as recruiting. Going to try and help you guys some in recruiting. I get a lot of questions about college football recruiting, and for quite some time, I've just been answering those by text, DMs, and things of that nature. But I'm back to giving some widespread advice via this platform right here that I'm happy to bring to you guys. So I thank you guys for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe to this channel and add some comments in there. How do you guys feel about some of the things that I've talked about here? Let's get some conversation going on this. And like I said, there'll be more shows like this, looking to do some really great interviews, some in-depth interviews with people in the world of high school football and college football, because that's what we celebrate here on the Gridiron Studs Show. High school and college football recruiting here. One last thing, if you are a lover of college football recruiting, or you are a high school football player looking to get recruited at the next level, do yourself a favor and download the Gridiron Studs app. I'll have a link to it in the description down below. Get on, create a profile, boost your recruiting, make full use of that. And if you are a fan, scroll through there and find some of the next best and greatest college football players that will be coming your way. All right, that's it for me. I'm going to head out. Till next time, Gridiron Studs Show. Be seen.